The ruthless proposal. To save her family's legacy, she must sell her freedom to the devil from her past. Chapter 1. The Wolf at the Door. The air in the Venetian palazzo was stale, smelling of old dust and fatting aristocracy. Sophia Rossi stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the Grand Canal, though her eyes saw nothing of the romantic twilight. Her hands, rough from years of restoring frescoes, trembled slightly as she clutched the foreclosure notice. "He is here, Signorina." The butler's voice was a death knell. Sophia turned, her spine stiffening. "Show him in, Marco." She expected a lawyer. She expected a bank representative. She did not expect him. The doors swung open, and the room seemed to shrink. Dante Valenti walked in, bringing with him the scent of rain, expensive leather, and pure, unadulterated danger. He was taller than she remembered, his shoulders broader, filling out the impeccable cut of his charcoal Armani suit. His face was a mask of bronzed granite, eyes the color of a stormy Adriatic sea. "Dante," she breathed, the name tasting like ash on her tongue. "Sophia." His voice was a low rumble, vibrating through the floorboards. He didn't smile. Dante Valenti hadn't smiled since the accident 5 years ago, the accident that killed his brother, and for which he blamed her father. "You bought the bank," she stated, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "You bought the debt." "I bought the leverage," he corrected, walking toward a covered antique chair and running a finger over the dust sheet. "Your father's gambling destroyed this family, Sophia. Now, I own the Palazzo Rossi. I own the art. I own the very air you are breathing." "Take it then," she snapped, her green eyes flashing. "Throw us out. Get your revenge. I will sleep on the streets before I beg you for mercy." Dante turned, his gaze raking over her simple painter's smock, lingering on the paint smudge on her cheek. A muscle feathered in his jaw. "I don't want you on the streets, Sophia. That would be a waste." He closed the distance between them. The air crackled with a sudden, suffocating electricity. "I have a proposal. I'm not interested. You haven't heard the terms." He pulled a folded document from his jacket. "My board of directors is nervous. They think my bachelor lifestyle is a liability for the upcoming merger. I need a wife. A respectable, aristocratic wife with a historic name." Sophia laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "You want to marry me. You hate me. Marriage is a business contract, Cara. Nothing more." His eyes hardened. "Marry me for 1 year. Give me the Rossi name to stabilize my image. In return, I wipe your father's debt and sign the palazzo over to you, fully restored. And if I refuse, then the bulldozers arrive on Monday, and your father goes to prison for fraud." Sophia looked at the man she had once secretly loved, the boy who had kissed her in the lemon groves before the world turned black. That boy was gone. In his place was a monster made of money and ice. "Fine," she whispered, a single tear escaping. "I will be your wife, but I will never be yours." Dante's smile was a cruel twist of lips. Read the fine print, Sophia. I expect full value for my investment. Chapter 2. The Gilded K. The wedding was a blur of paparazzi flashes and forced smiles. They were married in a private chapel in Tuscany. Sophia draped in vintage lace that felt like a shroud. Now she was trapped. Dante's villa on Lake Como was a fortress of glass and steel, starkly modern against the ancient landscape. It was cold, just like him. Sophia sat at the long mahogany dining table. It had been 2 weeks. They spoke only when necessary. But at night, the silence was louder. She slept in the guest wing. He slept in the master suite. You aren't eating, Dante observed, glancing up from his tablet. He looked devastatingly handsome in a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms. I'm not hungry. You look pale. My public relations team says the press is speculating you are unhappy. That violates Clause 4 of our agreement. Sophia slammed her fork down. Maybe if you treated me like a human being instead of an acquisition, I would look more radiant. Dante stood up, his chair scraping against the stone floor. He walked to her end of the table, looming over her. You think this is easy for me? You hold all the cards, Dante. You have everything. I have nothing, he roared, the sudden explosion of temper shocking her. I have a company I bleed for and a house that is empty. He gripped her chin, forcing her to look at him. His touch was scorching hot. For a moment, the anger in his eyes shifted into something darker, something hungry. Why do you still look at me like that? He whispered, his thumb tracing her lower lip. Like you did when we were 20. I don't, she lied, her heart hammering against her ribs. You are a liar, Sophia. You always were. He lowered his head. Sophia stopped breathing. She should push him away. She should hate him. But when his lips crushed against hers, it wasn't hate that flooded her veins. It was a tidal wave of repressed longing. The kiss was punishing, demanding. He tasted of wine and fury. Sophia's hands found their way into his hair, pulling him closer. For a moment, the contract didn't exist. The debt didn't exist. There was only the fire that had smoldered between them for 5 years. Dante pulled back abruptly, his chest heaving. He looked at her, his eyes black with desire, and then, terrifyingly, with regret. Go to your room, he rasped, turning his back on her. Before I forget that this is just business. Chapter 3. The Secret in the Villa. Weeks turned into a month. The tension in the villa was unbearable. Sophia threw herself into painting the lake view from the terrace, trying to ignore the way Dante watched her when he thought she wasn't looking. One afternoon, while searching the library for a book, Sophia found a locked drawer in Dante's desk. Driven by a strange intuition, she jimmied the lock with a hairpin. Inside was a file, the police report, the accident. She flipped through the pages, her breath hitched. Vehicle Ferrari Spider, driver Lorenzo Valenti. BAC 0.15. She froze. The official story, the story Dante had used to destroy her father, was that her father had cut the brake lines of the car due to a business dispute. But this report said the brakes were fine. Lorenzo, Dante's brother, had been drunk. He had been speeding, and there was a letter tucked in the back. A suicide note from Lorenzo. Dante, I can't do it anymore. The gambling debts are too high. I'm sorry. Sophia covered her mouth. Her father hadn't killed Lorenzo. Lorenzo had crashed the car on purpose or out of recklessness, fleeing his own demons. Dante knew. He had known the whole time. What are you doing? Sophia spun around. Dante stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat. He looked at the file in her hands, and his face went ashen. You lied, she whispered, holding up the paper. You destroyed my father's reputation. You blackmailed me into this marriage. All for a lie. You knew Lorenzo wasn't murdered. Dante walked into the room, looking defeated. I couldn't let the world know, he said quietly. My mother. It would have killed her to know Lorenzo took his own life. I had to protect his memory. So you sacrificed my family instead. Sophia screamed, throwing the file at his chest. You are despicable. She ran past him. He grabbed her arm, but she fought him off. Sophia, listen to me. No, I'm leaving. The contract is void. She ran out into the storm. She didn't have a car, so she ran toward the gates on foot. The rain blinded her. She didn't see the headlights of the delivery truck coming around the curve until it was too late. There was a screech of tires, a shout, and then darkness. Chapter 4. The hospital bed. Beeping, the rhythmic, annoying beeping. Sophia opened her eyes. The room was white, sterile. Thank God. Dante was sitting in the chair next to the bed. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Stubble covered his jaw. His eyes were bloodshot, and his impeccable suit was wrinkled. You're awake, he said, his voice cracking. He reached for her hand, but stopped himself, pulling back. Dante, she croaked. The baby. Dante froze. He stared at her, confusion and then shock washing over his features. Baby. Sophia. The doctors didn't say. Sophia closed her eyes. I think I was late. I haven't taken a test. Dante stood up, packing the small room. He ran a hand through his hair. You were pregnant, and you ran into a storm. I was running from you. He stopped. He looked at her, stripped of all his arrogance. I know, and I deserve it. He sat on the edge of the bed. The truck didn't hit you. You slipped and hit your head. You have a concussion and a broken ankle. But if there is a baby, we need to find out. A nurse entered, looking cheerful. Ah, Mrs. Valenti, you're awake. And we have the blood test results requested by the emergency team. Dante looked at the nurse, terrified. Is she pregnant? The nurse smiled. 6 weeks along. Congratulations. The silence that followed was heavy. The nurse left, sensing the atmosphere. Dante looked at Sophia's stomach. covered by the hospital sheet. He reached out, his hand trembling, and placed it gently over her womb. "An heir," he whispered. "But I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you." "No, you don't," Sophia said softly. "You used me." "I did," he admitted, "but not just for the company. Sophia, I blamed your father because it was easier than blaming my brother. But the truth is, I came for you because I couldn't stay away." He looked into her eyes, pleading. "5 years ago, I loved you. I pushed you away when Lorenzo died because I was drowning in grief. When I saw you in that palazzo, so proud, so beautiful, I wanted to bind you to me the only way I knew how, through business, because I thought you could never love a man like me again. You have a funny way of showing love, Dante," she said, tears pricking her eyes. "I will change," he vowed, gripping her hand. "I will clear your father's name. I will tell the world the truth about Lorenzo. I don't care about the scandal. I only care about you and our child." He dropped to his knees beside the hospital bed, pressing his face against her palm. "Give me a chance, Sophia, not as a business partner, but as a husband." Chapter 5. The Grand Gesture. 6 months later, the Palazzo Rossi was no longer crumbling. It was vibrant, filled with fresh flowers and the sound of music. Dante had kept his word. He had released the evidence. The scandal had been massive. Valenti Motors' stock had dipped, but it had recovered. The truth had set them free. Sophia stood on the balcony, her hand resting on her rounded belly. The sunset over the Grand Canal was painting the water in shades of gold and violet. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind. Dante rested his chin on her shoulder. "Happy," he murmured against her neck. "The restoration is almost complete," she said, leaning back into him. "And my father is coming for dinner." "Good," Dante turned her around. "But I have one more thing to restore." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside sat a ring, not the gaudy diamond he had given her for the press, but a vintage emerald set in gold filigree. It was the ring she had admired in an antique shop window when they were 20 years old. "I tracked it down," he said softly. "I want to propose again, properly." He didn't kneel, he couldn't, not with her so close. But he held her gaze with an intensity that burned. "Sophia Rossi, will you marry me? Not for a contract, not for a debt, but because I cannot breathe without you." Sophia smiled, the radiant, genuine smile that Dante had almost destroyed, but ultimately saved. "Yes, Dante, I will." He kissed her, and this time there were no secrets. There was only the promise of forever, sealed by the Mediterranean sun and the beating of 2 hearts, and the tiny third one fluttering between them. The end.